In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, March 29th, here in South Korea. Russia vetoes a UN Security Council resolution that effectively ends the monitoring of sanctions on North Korea over its nuclear weapons ambitions, as the US accuses it of seeking to shield its broader arms deal with the regime. Back on the local front, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo is hosting a meeting with directors of 5 major hospitals this afternoon amid the prolonged walkout by junior doctors, while health officials unveil new support initiatives for pediatricians. Meanwhile, Korea's industrial output grows yet again in February to 1.3% on month, noting a 4th straight month of expansion as the country's production of semiconductors, including DRAMs, powers on. Russia has blocked a UN resolution seeking to extend the monitoring of sanctions on North Korea. Security Council members believe the Kremlin's block is aimed at hiding its own weapons deal with Pyongyang. Our foreign affairs correspondent Peunji starts us off.
For the past 15 years, a panel of experts has been monitoring United Nations sanctions against North Korea over its nuclear program, reporting twice a year to the Security Council and recommending action for improved implementation of the measures. But Russia vetoed a 1-year extension of the panel during a vote on Thursday, bringing an end to its operation when its current mandate expires on April 30th. Of the 15 council members, China abstained from the vote, while the remaining 13 member states voted in favor. During the Security Council meeting, South Korea's ambassador to the United Nations pointed out that Russia seems to be more interested in embracing North Korea for providing munitions and ballistic missiles for the Ukraine war, at the expense of the proper functioning of the Council.
This is almost comparable to destroying a CCTV to avoid being caught red-handed.
But Russia hit out at the experts, saying the group has ceased to carry out its obligations.
Its work is increasingly being reduced to playing into the hands of Western approaches, reprinting biased information and analysing newspaper headlines and poor quality photos.
A spokesperson for South Korea's foreign ministry criticized Russia's move, saying it was an irresponsible action that greatly undermines the trust of the UN Security Council within the international community, at a time when monitoring UN sanctions against North Korea needs to be strengthened. Thursday's decision comes as Russia has recently been deepening military ties with North Korea. Officials from South Korea and the U.S. have said North Korea has provided munitions and military equipment to Russia for use in the war in Ukraine. The U.S. said it's deeply disappointed by Russia's latest actions, calling it an example of greater cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang.
Moscow appears to be intent on facilitating the DPRK's illegal pursuit of weapons of mass destruction, and its veto today was a self-interested effort to bury the panel's reporting on its own collusion with the DPRK to secure weapons that it can use to further its aggression against Ukraine.
With the monitoring of North Korea sanctions set to end next month, there are concerns that the Security Council could lose a reliable measure of informing UN member states of sanctions violations by North Korea. Peunji, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida has reaffirmed his hopes for talks with North Korea's Kim Jong-un. Speaking to members of the media on Thursday, he claimed both Tokyo and Pyongyang would gain from, quote, fruitful relations, which would also serve to ease rampant concerns over regional security. While refusing to address recent remarks by Kim's sister Yeojung, rejecting prospects of a summit should Japan seek to address the abductions issue, Prime Minister Kishida, for his part, said he remained committed to bringing home the Japanese nationals abducted by North Korean agents in the 1970s and 80s. As for the latest regarding the standoff over admissions quota between the government and the medical arena here, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo is hosting, a meeting with directors of the country's 5 major hospitals this afternoon, while health officials unveil new support initiatives for pediatricians. Our Park Gonu has details.
Amid the trainee doctors and medical school professors' mass resignations against the government's decision to increase the medical school quota, the government has responded with a slew of reforms to improve working conditions for doctors. On Friday morning, the second Vice Minister of the Ministry of Health and Welfare followed up on the results of a Central Disaster Management Headquarters meeting, which saw new measures implemented in the pediatric care system. The Health Ministry is pushing to set up a yearly budget of 67 billion Korean won, or just under $50 million to increase compensation for doctors performing high-risk neonatal surgery. Pediatricians will now also be able to claim additional compensation for treatment of children aged up to 6 years old. The additional compensation was previously only given for treatment on premature babies and those aged below 1 year old. Prime Minister Han Duk-soo is also hosting a meeting on Friday afternoon with hospital leaders in an attempt to mitigate the situation. He will be holding talks with the chiefs of the country's biggest hospitals, commonly dubbed as the Big Five: Seoul National University Hospital, Severance Hospital, Samsung Medical Center, Seoul Asan Medical Center, and Seoul St. Mary's Hospital. It's expected that he will reiterate the need to increase the medical school quota and request major hospital directors to play a mediation role in talks with trainee doctors and medical school professors. But the medical school community has been maintaining its strong stance, especially following the election of Lee Myung-taek as the Korean Medical Association's new leader. Lee is known to be one of the KMA's most vocal opponents against the increase in the medical school quota, and will be holding his first press conference also on Friday afternoon. Park Gon-woo, Arirang News.
In other news, capital Seoul's skyline has faded as suffocating yellow dust covers most of Korea today. Our An Sung-jin has more on the seasonal plight for people here in this part of the world.
The worst yellow dust so far this spring is covering South Korea. Starting from Thursday night, the peninsula has been blanketed by a severe yellow dust storm, which was carried by winds from Inner Mongolia.
Yellow dust storms can be seen in South Korea when three conditions are fulfilled. Yellow dust is created, moves over Korea and falls. This time, a downward current was formed in the air, making the particles fall.
The yellow dust storm is expected to move further south, affecting the air quality of most areas of the country. As of 5 p.m. Thursday, the Environment Ministry issued an attention yellow dust advisory for the capital area, Gangwon-do, Chungcheongnam-do, and Gyeongsang-buk-do provinces. Fine dust alert levels have also been raised to very bad, which indicates that the average hourly concentration of fine dust particles smaller than 10 micrometers in diameter is more than 150 micrograms per cubic meter. The capital Seoul is seeing fine dust levels of 384 micrograms, and the city of Incheon peaked at nearly 500 micrograms. High concentrations of fine dust particles are expected across the rest of the peninsula throughout the day. Dirty rain caused by the dust storm is also expected across parts of the central and southern region, making an umbrella necessary. The Environment Minister emphasized the need for extra public caution and for people to limit their outdoor activities. Those with respiratory diseases, the elderly, and children are advised to stay indoors. Wearing a mask is recommended throughout the day. The yellow dust storm is expected to continue until Saturday. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
Korea's industrial output remains on track, marking a fourth month of expansion in February amid greater chip production. Retail sales, however, lost ground. Our economics correspondent Lee Soo-jin has the latest.
South Korea's overall industrial production and investment last month saw increases, while private spending dropped. Data from Statistics Korea on Friday shows that industrial output in February climbed 1.3% compared to the previous month. This marks the fourth consecutive rise. The agency mainly attributed the rise to a more than 3% on-month growth in production in the manufacturing industry, driven by a strong demand for semiconductors. More specifically, memory chips such as DRAM and flash memory chips saw a surge in production. Output in the service industry also contributed to last month's industrial output, inching up 0.7% on the back of greater demand for accommodation and restaurants. And facility investment was also up in the second month of the year, surging 10.3% compared to a month earlier. This is the largest growth seen in more than 9 years and a contrast from January's figures when facility investment fell on month. The agency said the growth was mostly due to the surge in investment of more than 20% in transport and 6% in the machinery sector.
The on-month rise of 10.3% in facility investment was due to investment increasing in areas such as ships and specialized industrial equipment.
But retail sales, a barometer for private spending and consumer demand, fell 3.1%, which is the steepest on-month fall since July last year. This comes as people spent less on both non-durable goods such as cosmetics and food and durable goods such as consumer electronics and home appliances. The official from Statistics Korea said that while the on-month figures were seasonally adjusted, it is likely that private spending may have been spread out between the first 2 months of the year, with Seolnar or the Lunar New Year falling early February this year. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
Chip makers have entered a fresh race for dominance as artificial intelligence and its need for power and speed calls for a new generation of chip innovations. So where do Korean businesses stand? Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun takes a look.
With the boom in the AI market, non-memory semiconductors are riding on a high. The global semiconductor market was at nearly $600 billion in 2022. And according to data from the Korea Institute for Industrial Economics and Trade, memory chips accounted for just under 24% of global sales. Non-memory chips, on the other hand, took more than a three-quarter portion of that pie as they cost more. While South Korea is the market leader for memory chips with more than a 60% global market share, it accounts for less than 5% in the non-memory chip sector. But recent developments have seen South Korea jumping onto the AI chip bandwagon. US firm NVIDIA is the current market leader for AI chips, with around an 80% market share, and just last week it unveiled its next new chip architecture model, Blackwell. It claims to be 30 times faster at performing tasks than its predecessor, and NVIDIA's major customers such as Google and OpenAI are expected to start using it later this year. But in the same week, South Korean tech giant Samsung Electronics also introduced its first AI chip, the Mach-1. It will be supplied to the South Korean online platform Naver by the end of the year, prompting it to reduce reliance on NVIDIA for AI chips. In terms of function, NVIDIA's chips are designed for both AI training and inference, whereas Samsung's chips are more focused on the inference aspect that runs live data through a trained model to make new predictions or conclusions. So Blackwell needs a high bandwidth memory chip that allows fast data transfer rates. But with the Mach-1, Samsung Electronics claims it will be set up with a low power memory chip, which means that it will be a lot cheaper than those using an HBM. Experts say that just providing funding support won't help domestic firms, and a long-term plan needs to be established to help domestic companies.
Problems with labor shortages and protecting new technologies have emerged recently in South Korea, so tackling those issues will be more important than any financial concerns.
This sentiment was reflected in a recent meeting with industry leaders and the Ministry of Economy and Finance, where companies mentioned a need for government support in introducing domestic AI technology in the public sector and easing regulations on AI learning data security. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
The Great Train Express, or GTX, is poised to begin partial operation this coming Saturday. The GTX-A line will open at 5:30 a.m. and run until around 1 a.m. between Suseol in southern Seoul and Dongtan in Gyeonggi-do Province, with a stop at Seongnam. The train cuts commute time between Seoul and the greater metropolitan area to some 20 minutes. Service at Gusang Station, also in Gyeonggi-do Province, will begin later in June. The cost of a trip from Suseol to Dongtan is 4,450 won, roughly $3.30. The government has shared a fresh blueprint aimed at revitalizing rural communities via tailored support policies, especially for those in danger of disappearing. Our Kim Da-mi has details.
South Korea will combat agricultural decline by easing certain regulations, according to plans announced following an emergency economic meeting on Thursday, hosted by Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok and participated in by relevant ministers.
The government will reform agricultural land regulations to revitalize farmland living standards and local economies nationwide.
The Land and the Agriculture Ministries will work in tandem to reform regulations by the end of the year, which will promote all forms of vertical farming. Vertical farming has long been seen as a tool to adapt to climate change, as it provides a localized year-round supply of fresh produce. South Korea's export of its technological expertise in this area is also expected to continue increasing, highlighting the importance of relaxing regulations. There will also be pan-governmental efforts directed towards allowing residential facilities in rural areas to be built in which people from city or those on weekend farm experiences can stay, a move aimed at boosting local economies. And to address the growing possibility of agricultural extinction, the Agriculture Ministry's New Ruralism 2024 initiative aims to transfer living standards on farmlands to encourage people to stay or move to rural areas. This comes amid concerns over the rapidly decreasing rural population. South Korea's rural population is expected to fall 12% by 2050 compared to 2022, greater than the projected 9% decline in the overall population over the same period, according to the Agriculture Ministry. The initiative includes providing training programs and monetary support to young farmers and entrepreneurs in the agricultural sector. Laboratories and test facilities will be built by the Ministry for businesses to test agricultural technologies and products. Related ministries will work together to improve rural communities' living standards by increasing access to health and child care services. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, over in Russia, while family and friends continue to grieve the loss of loved ones at the hands of radical Islamists in Moscow last Friday, Russian authorities appear intent to link the attack to Ukraine, citing proof which they have yet to share. Our Lee Sing-jae reports.
It's been nearly a week since the terror attack at the Crocus City Hall music venue in Moscow, which killed over 140 people and injured a dozen more. 4 gunmen from Tajikistan have already been charged over the attack, and Islamic State also released a video claiming responsibility. However, Moscow continues to blame Kyiv, saying it has secured evidence that last week's terror attack was orchestrated by Ukraine. A statement issued by the Russian Investigative Committee on Thursday said that the gunmen were linked to Ukrainian nationalists and had received a significant amount of cash and cryptocurrency from Ukraine to conduct the terror attack. However, the committee did not provide any evidence to support its accusations. Experts at U.S. think tank the Institute for the Study of War have rejected claims of Ukraine's involvement, given the fact that IS would not carry out an attack on behalf of Ukraine, a Christian nation. Meanwhile, Washington says Moscow's continued blame game against Ukraine is propaganda to shift the blame to Kyiv and Washington, stressing that there's no evidence of Ukraine's involvement. White House National Security Advisor John Kirby, during a press briefing on Thursday, said Russian President Vladimir Putin and his officials are trying to shift the blame when it's clear that the Islamic State is fully responsible, adding that Washington had provided intelligence to Russian authorities before the terror attack and warned them in writing. Kirby added that the U.S. provided intelligence to Russia because it did not want to see innocent lives lost to terrorism. Lee Sing-jae, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at the latest news in the world now. In the United States, former billionaire and co-founder of cryptocurrency exchange FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried, has been sentenced to 25 years in prison for defrauding billions of dollars from customers and investors. Prosecutors said it was one of the largest financial frauds in U.S. history. At Thursday's hearing, U.S. District Judge Lewis Kaplan criticized Bankman-Fried, saying he knew it was wrong, he knew it was criminal, but he's not going to admit a thing, before reading out the sentence. Bankman-Fried said he realizes a lot of people feel really let down, adding he was sorry about that. The 32-year-old was convicted by a New York jury last November on 7 criminal counts, including conspiracy to commit money laundering and wire fraud, after he was found to have stolen more than $8 billion from his customers. Federal prosecutors said it was one of the largest financial frauds in U.S. history and initially had sought a sentence of 40 to 50 years in prison. In South Africa, a bus crash in the country's northern province of Limpopo on Thursday killed 45 and left the sole survivor, an 8-year-old girl, seriously injured. South Africa's Department of Transport said that the bus was taking Easter pilgrims from Botswana to the province. According to reports, the bus crashed through barriers on a bridge approximately 300 kilometers north of Johannesburg before falling 50 meters into a ravine below. Rescue operations continued into the late hours of Thursday evening, with authorities saying debris made it difficult to reach bodies, some of which were burned beyond recognition. South Africa's transport minister sent condolences to the victims' families and said that the government would repatriate the bodies to Botswana. Chinese consumer electronics company Xiaomi began sales of its electric car on Thursday in its competitive domestic market. The firm's standard SU7 EV model will be priced at around $30,000, while the Pro and Max versions will cost up to just over $41,000. Company CEO Lei Jun said that the shift from consumer electronics to car manufacturing had not been easy, mentioning their US rival Apple, who gave up on the idea. All Xiaomi SU7 models for now will only be sold in China, which with its large population has the world's biggest auto market. In the Icelandic town of Grindavik, a volcano erupting against a backdrop of northern lights was captured on a time-lapse video. The northern lights, also known as Aurora Borealis, is visible in Iceland more than 100 nights a year. About 4,000 of Grindavik's inhabitants have been evacuated several times in the past 6 months, following a series of volcanic activities, including earthquakes and large cracks in the ground. Since last December's eruption, a wall has been built to divert lava away from the town. Kim Seong, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Korea is on high alert against the worst yellow dust storm of the season. Dust concentration has been nearly 10 times higher this morning, with dust alerts in place across Korea. Dust levels will go up high in the afternoon from the southern regions as well. Along with a face mask, an umbrella is a must, as spotty rain will be mixed with yellow dust along with strong winds, dropping 5 to 10 millimeters of rainfall. Skies will turn sunny after the rain goes away by the afternoon, but the sun will be blurred by the yellow dust. Then daily highs will go up higher this afternoon, topping out at 13 degrees in the capital. Gyeongju and Jeju will notice a big rise in highs compared to yesterday, seeing a high of 21 degrees. Unfortunately, tomorrow is looking to be a dusty one as well for most places. So if you're planning spring outings this weekend, keep your face mask on, be mindful of temperature swings as well, and dress accordingly. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions. And those are the headlines at this hour here in Korea. Coming up right after this break is our daily panel session. Thank you for now.